Let hearth embers fade to gold. Let your dreams drift open. Ring the bell, and new horizons unfold. You open your eyes to a faint amber glow. Not the blue pulse of a phone screen, but the shy flicker of a tallow candle. Rough-hewn stone walls breathe a cool trace of earth and wood smoke. Somewhere a rooster cracks the silence like a living alarm. Your mattress is no memory foam oasis, just a sack of straw that crinkles each time you shift. For a heartbeat you wonder if you've rolled onto the set of a costume drama, and then the truth settles in. You have drifted backward, landing in the English countryside more than 8 centuries ago. Pause. Feel the strangeness wrap around you like a wool cloak at dawn. Let curiosity hush the first stirrings of worry. History will keep you safe here, tucked in the soft focus of dream and story. You rise, tugging a coarse tunic over your head. The fabric scratches, but the chill recedes. You nudge open a timber door and step into a world stitched from dirt lanes and low stone cottages, each roof crowned with thatch still wet from night mist. Close by, a goat huffs impatiently, reminding you that morning chores wait for no traveler, time-stranded or not. You scoop grain for the chickens that swirl around your boots in a feathered storm. You coax warm milk from the goat, steam curling into air crisp as an apple skin. With a gentle pat to the animal's flank, you lead a broad-shouldered ox from its pen, fingers brushing the ridge of muscle along its neck. A living engine that will cut the first furrows of the season. Back inside the single-room cottage, a family begins to stir. No glass windows here, only shutters that leak pale light across packed earth floors. Together you share a humble breakfast. Barley porridge thick as paste, a heel of yesterday's bread, a swallow of small ale weaker than modern tea. The taste is plain, but the warmth settles into your belly like a quiet promise that you will endure the hours ahead. At sunrise, the sky blushes rose, then quickens to gold. You guide the ox toward fields that belong to the local lord. Land your family has worked for generations in exchange for protection you rarely see but always owe. Each step of the plow turns dark, living soil, releasing the faint perfume of worms and distant harvest bread. Sweat beads on your brow, and muscles complain. Yet there's a rhythm here, pull, plant, breathe, that feels almost like prayer. In the Middle Ages, salvation is negotiated with both rosary and rake. While you labor, your gaze catches a flash of movement. A small boy racing between furrows, stick in hand, shouting imaginary commands to invisible troops. The villagers call him William, a common name for an uncommon child. Orphaned early, he spends daylight chasing butterflies and castle dreams, oblivious to the strict horizons of peasant birth. No one suspects that William's ungovernable curiosity will one day vault him from these very fields into the halls of power, rewriting the map of nations. But that is tomorrow's chronicle. For now, he is only a laughing silhouette against a cathedral sky. You push the plow onward. Sun climbs higher. Birds relinquish their dawn songs to the steady rasp of metal meeting earth. Every so often you straighten, spine popping, and glance toward the manor house on the distant rise. A reminder that your sweat finances someone else's banquet. Yet even lord and lady answer to higher order. The king's levy, the church's tithe, the mysterious whims of weather and war. In this hierarchy of obligations, security and burden are braided tight. By midday you pause beneath a hawthorn hedge, sharing a crumbly cheese and a coarse onion with fellow field hands. Conversation drifts to talk of saints' days, rumors of plague in a town 2 valleys over, and the price of salt hauled from the coast. You realize how information is both precious and slippery. News arrives on boot leather and vanishes into rumor before sunset. Afternoon light softens to honey, and you guide the ox homeward. The village hearths cough columns of smoke that flatten against a lavender sky. Chickens settle, goats bleat, and somewhere a distant church bell tolls none, its hollow notes rolling over fields like slow water. Inside the cottage, supper repeats the morning's simplicity. Lentil stew this time, scented with a single bay leaf. Hunger grants it a richness no modern spice rack could match. As dusk deepens, you step outside once more. Above you, the Milky Way unfurls unpolluted, a river of silver dust. In this age without neon glare, every star feels close enough to pluck. You think of the villagers' nightly prayers, their fears of wolves and war, their hopes for a fair harvest and a merciful priest. You think, too, of the boy William, asleep now on his own straw pallet, dreaming perhaps of tournament trumpets or distant seas. History knows where his path leads, but you, visitor from the future, carry the secret quietly. The candle guttering on the cottage sill calls you back inside. You settle onto your straw mattress, joints humming with honest fatigue. Let the crackle of the hearth mingle with cricket song and the distant low of cattle. Feel your breath slow, your limbs surrender to gravity. Medieval night is vast and velvet. Allow it to close gently around you. And as sleep invites you deeper, remember that across all centuries people have risen before dawn, coaxed life from soil, worried over children, and stared at the same bright moon. Kings and ploughmen share the pulse of wanting to matter, to be remembered. Perhaps that is the quiet bridge between your world and this one. Not castles or cathedrals, but the steady heartbeat of human hope echoing through time. Now close your eyes. Let the rooster's crow fade. Let the ox's hooves grow distant. Tomorrow, modern sunlight will stream through familiar windows, but tonight you belong to candlelight and cool stone, to barley fields and uncharted possibility. Rest well, time traveler. Dawn will bring another story. You pause at the edge of the field, wiping sweat with the back of your sleeve, and there, just beyond the furrows, you catch sight of a lanky teenager astride a borrowed horse. His name is William, a duke's illegitimate son boarded with loyal vassals for safekeeping while Normandy's barons feud. No peasant this boy, yet hardly pampered royalty either. He polishes his own stirrups, eats coarse rye with the grooms, and rides every morning until the mist burns off, coaxing muscle and discipline into a frame still all elbows and hope. Under the watchful eye of his guardian lord, he learns to couch a lance, judge a wind shift, and, more important, read the brittle politics of 11th century Europe. Latin prayers, tally marks on a wax table, the etiquette of bowing just low enough to flatter but never so low as to grovel. Every lesson is a rung on a ladder he intends to climb. When the household priest speaks of destiny, William listens harder than any altar boy. He already suspects the future is malleable, like hot iron, if one has the nerve to strike. As the curtain of sleep descends and shadows dance softly, tap the bell so each story can perch upon the edge of your pillow. News soon drifts across the channel. King Edward of England lies dying without a clear heir. 3 claimants circle the throne like hawks: Harold Godwin's son, the powerful English earl; Harold Hardrada, the battle-scarred king of Norway; and William himself, who swears Edward once vowed the crown to him. Whether that promise was ironclad or imagined hardly matters. In the Middle Ages, legitimacy is often forged at sword point. By late summer 1066, William has marshaled an army on the Norman coast. Cavalry in polished hauberks, archers from the forests of Eu, infantry hardened by Breton skirmishes. Papal banners flutter overhead, for Rome has blessed the venture, framing conquest as holy correction rather than naked ambition. You watch black-hulled ships slide into the channel like silent wolves. A stiff south wind fills their sails, and by dawn the Norman host beaches on the shingle near Hastings. Harold Godwin's son, fresh from repelling the Norwegians at Stamford Bridge, hurries south with a force exhausted but determined. On October 14th, the 2 armies lock in a grim stalemate. English housecarls plant a shield wall atop Senlac Ridge, axes poised. Normans attack uphill, horsemen wheeling and recoiling like surf against a cliff. Hours grind past. Then William, noticing pockets of English zeal breaking formation to chase retreating cavalry, feigns a full withdrawal. The shield wall ripples, cracks, and finally splinters. Norman arrows hiss through the gap. One finds Harold's eye, while mailed knights crash into the exposed flank. By dusk, ravens circle a hillside quilted in iron and blood. Christmas Day, Westminster Abbey. Incense coils beneath new stone vaults as William is anointed king. French vowels echoing off Anglo-Saxon pillars. The coronation sparks both awe and resentment. Outside, anxious Londoners set nearby thatch alight, mistaking the Latin chanting for a riot. Inside, the bishop's oil consecrates a union that will reshape language, law, and architecture for centuries. Almost overnight, England's old nobility splinters. Norman barons receive earldoms carved from confiscated estates. French replaces Old English in royal courts. Scribes begin the Doomsday Survey, cataloging every ox, mill, and meadow to fund the new regime. Across the countryside, mottes rise, steep earth mounds crowned by timber keeps, seedlings of a castle culture that will soon sprout stone curtain walls, arrow loops, and drawbridges. Within those gray ramparts, lords dine on swan glazed with ginger, while masons chip saints and monsters into limestone corbels. Yet the courtyard tells another story. Smiths hammer horseshoes. Laundresses scrub winters of grime from wool. Serfs trudge in with cartloads of grain. Proof that conquest rests on more backs than banners. You feel the tremor of change radiate outward. Peasant families haggle with sheriffs who now speak accented English. Monks illuminate manuscripts with Norman saints. Guilds adopt French loanwords. Merchant, tailor, justice. Soon stitched into everyday speech. The old and new braid together, sometimes seamlessly, sometimes like a poorly set bone. Stand back and the sweep of it is dizzying. A bastard duke becomes a king, one battlefield reroutes a culture, and the ripples will reach Shakespeare's stage, the Magna Carta, even the distant syntax of your own sentences. Yet if you strip away armor and heraldry, the engine is still recognizably human: ambition, resilience, the restless itch to claim a future not yet promised. Night gathers over the freshly raised keep. Torches on the battlements blink like cautious stars. Inside, pages snuff candles in the great hall, while sentries pace above a moat reflecting moonlit clouds. Somewhere in a modest village hut, a farmer turns over on a straw mattress, unaware that his grandchildren will speak a language half-grown from Norman roots. History does its work whether we notice or not. Ease onto your own pillow now, breathing in a slower century. Let hoofbeats fade. Let the clang of swords soften into distant lullaby. The hay-scented dawn, the clash at Hastings, the echo of Latin hymns in candlelit stone, all drift into gentle hum, a reminder that the past is both far away and stitched into every ordinary word you know. Rest, traveler, knowing that when morning returns you to the present, William's long shadow will still stretch quietly beneath your feet, part of the ground you walk without even thinking. You stand at the base of a newly finished curtain wall, neck craned until the battlements blur against a pewter sky. This is more than stacked stone. It is a declaration. When rumors of raiders or rival barons drift on the wind, the drawbridge will rise, the portcullis will slam shut, and the castle will turn inward. Kitchens stoking, archers pacing, priests murmuring Latin over barrels of salted pork. A fortress is equal parts sanctuary and stage, a place where a lord's authority towers as tangibly as the keep itself. Yet power in the Middle Ages is never a single pillar. Just beyond the arrow slits you glimpse the lacework spire of a cathedral, its bells tolling notes that hang like incense over field and town. In this century of faith, the church rivals any king. Monasteries own broad acres, tally harvests, collect rents. Within cloister walls, monks bend over vellum, copying Aristotle beside Augustine, turning fragile parchment into time capsules. For the ambitious, a tonsure can be a ladder. Sons of minor nobles trade swords for scholastic Latin. Daughters enter convents where the quill and loom grant rare skills, and a whisper of independence. Still, that same church can thunder. From pulpits, friars paint hell in colors no tapestry can match. Scarlet for greed, pitch black for lust, sulfur yellow for blasphemy. Some souls respond by retreating into silence. Benedictines who rise in darkness to chant matins, then hoe vegetable plots with calloused hands. Others, robed in richer cloth, stride straight onto the political chessboard. An abbot might broker a truce. A bishop might ride at the head of mailed knights, crozier glinting beside steel. When Pope Urban II calls Christendom to reclaim Jerusalem, those worlds collide spectacularly. Knights stitch red crosses to their surcoats. Pledged sins will be wiped clean by distant dust, and set sail for shores they have only heard sung about at hearth fires. You watch columns of men vanish down rutted roads, their departure equal parts pilgrimage, business venture, and gamble for everlasting glory. The reality is crueler. Disease on the Anatolian plains, hunger outside Antioch's battered walls, the shock of desert heat against chainmail. And still they push on, until the summer of 1099 when Jerusalem's stones run slick and history is stained permanently red. What begins as holy war evolves into an unexpected exchange. Returning crusaders unload silks the color of pomegranate seeds, glassware that catches light like liquid, spices sharp enough to wake a monk at lauds. Caravans multiply, ports swell, Europe's map stretches, and suddenly the horizon feels negotiable. But the most fearsome traveler is unseen. In the mid-14th century, caravans from the east carry a stowaway, Yersinia pestis. First it is only a rumor. Ports shuttered in Sicily, a hush over markets in Marseilles, but soon blackened swellings bloom beneath every second collarbone, and churchyards cannot open graves fast enough. You walk village lanes that were lively a week ago and hear only the buzz of flies and the rasp of cart wheels collecting the departed. Fields lie uncut, guild halls silent, yet paradoxically, wages for the survivors rise. Land once hoarded by lords is suddenly negotiable. Out of terror sprouts social transformation. Through it all, ordinary rhythms persist. A peasant still measures the year by lambing season and wheat harvest, still patches a thatch roof before autumn storms. A stonemason outside your castle keeps shaping blocks with a cadence older than crusades or plagues, dressing limestone so precisely that future centuries may mistake it for permanence. As dusk gathers, torches flare atop the ramparts, and the great iron bells toll Compline. You feel the slow heartbeat of medieval life. Fortress and farm, scripture and sword, dread and resilience stepped in a perpetual dance. The world you came from, of glowing screens and antiseptic hospitals, shrinks to a faint memory, replaced by candle smoke, chilled stone, and a collective certainty that the divine currents beneath history are as real as the wind. Let that wind lull you now. Imagine drawbridge chains clanking into place, monks filing toward shadowed choirs, far-off traders unfurling crimson sails, and a single star above the keep that looks exactly as it did 1,000 years ago. Breathe in the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, and slip into rest, cradled by the echo of bells fading across the darkened fields. You wake to the shriek of gulls circling the harbor, and for a heartbeat the scene feels ordinary. Ropes creaking, sailors cursing, barrels thudding onto cobbles. Then you notice the silence beneath those everyday noises, the way townsfolk hold scraps of cloth to their mouths, the nervous glances they cast at a single merchant cog newly docked from the Crimea. Rats pour down the gangplank in a furry tide no one bothers to chase, and within days a whisper spreads faster than any tide chart. Plague. First come the fevers, dry heat that no cold spring can quench, followed by a storm of vomiting and the ominous swell of black buboes in groin and armpit. Priests stagger through streets swinging censers heavy with frankincense, but the scented smoke can't mask the reek of hastily stacked corpses. Dead carts rattle by moonlight, iron rims bumping over stones smeared with pitch. Panic slithers everywhere. Some families bolt for distant farms only to find the pestilence galloping ahead of them. Others crowd into churches, begging saints whose painted eyes stare back in mournful stillness. A few, hungry for blame, set torches to the homes of Jews, midwives, or any traveler whose accent rings foreign. Within 2 grim seasons, nearly half of Europe's faces vanish. Wheat rots where it stands. Flocks wander untended. Monastery scriptoria grow quiet as quills fall from lifeless fingers. Yet in the ruin, a strange shift stirs. With labor scarce, villains who once bent beneath a lord's tally stick now name their own wages. Empty cottages lure families to towns where guild masters compete for new hands. The cracked masonry of feudal custom begins to splinter. Possibility, thin and daring, peeks through like a green shoot after fire. No sooner has the continent begun to blink through plague's smoky veil than rumble of war reaches your village. King Edward III of England insists that the lilies of France rightly bloom on his own coat of arms. Across the Channel, French knights tighten mail chausse, certain their crown is beyond question. What follows is less a single war than a rolling thunder of sieges, chevauchés, and brittle truces that will span a century. long enough for a soldier to march off under Edward's banner and have his grandson die beneath Henry V's. The first great clash, Cressy, pits English longbows against French chivalry. Arrows fall like black rain, and nobles discover that courage cannot outgallop a yard-long shaft of ash. Still, pride drives both kingdoms on. Fields from Aquitaine to Picardy become pawns. Villages like yours supply grain, sons, and coin until the difference between victory and survival blurs. Yet life in the lanes hums on. At dawn you pad through muck toward the byre, cool mud squeezing between bare toes. The blacksmith's hammer rings a stubborn rhythm. The baker's peel slides loaves from a clay oven, crust crackling in the chill. After a breakfast of coarse bread soaked in small ale, you shoulder a hoe and head to the stripped fields, long ribbons of earth parceled among neighbors in an intricate braid. There you trade gossip more eagerly than seed. Rumors of higher wages westward, whispers that a healer in the next shire has an herb to ward the black, tidings of a distant shepherd girl, Jean, whose visions claim heaven itself sides with France. The church bell marks prime, and for a moment everything stills. Smoke rises straight from thatch, lambs bleat. A child laughs at the clumsy flutter of a wooden bird he carved with his father's dull knife. Hardship has not erased joy. It merely salts it, sharpening every small comfort. Warm straw, a lullaby, the shared miracle of survival. Night will come, as it always does, bringing stars that no plague can dim and constellation sailors still trust to steer them beyond familiar coves. Before sleep, you kneel by the hearth where embers glow like scattered garnets, and you whisper a prayer that blends old folk charm with Latin refrains you only half understand. Whether saints or simple chance answer, you'll rise tomorrow to milk the goats again, mend a fallen fence, and press forward through history's vast turning gears. Remember this, even as your eyelids grow heavy. Empires, epidemics, and endless wars reshape the map, but the quiet pulse of ordinary people, of you, keeps the world beating. Drift now on that thought, letting the rooster's distant crow fade, the blacksmith's anvil soften to a lullaby, and the great wheel of time spin gently beneath your dreams. You stand at the rim of a barley field, evening light pooled like honey across the stalks, and feel the hush that settles when day's hammering slows. Your calloused palms still hum with the memory of hoe and plow, but the village bell tolls vespers now. Permission to lay burdens down. Behind you, the Lord's manor squats, half-timbered and sure of its own importance. Beyond it, the abbey spire rises, slender as a prayer stitched into the dusk. These two towers, sword and psalter, bookend every breath you take. Inside the cottage, the hearth is already glowing. You break a crust of rye, dip it in thin ale, and trade gentle jests with kin whose faces mirror smoke-soft fatigue. Tomorrow will pull you back to the furrows, yet tonight offers a pocket of peace. Ember light licking the rafters, the faint bleat of a goat settling for the night, the familiar scratch of straw beneath your woolen tunic. Still, you cannot avoid the signposts of rank that stud the landscape. Your own tunic is plain undyed wool. The reeve's wife parades scarlet sleeves stitched with foreign silk. The parish priest strides past with ink-stained fingers, one of a scant few who can coax meaning from parchment. He speaks of celestial hierarchies, of a ladder you climb rung by rung with humility and tithe. You nod, yet a seed of restlessness stirs when he intones that your place in the chain is fixed by heaven's decree. Change, though, whispers at the edges. A peddler's wagon has begun appearing twice each season, burdened with glass beads from Venice, a hand-crank mill from distant Rhineland, a rumor that wages are higher in towns where plague thinned the ranks of masters. Even the miller's apprentice, once bound to his father's grindstone, muses aloud about joining a guild in York. Such talk drifts through alehouse rafters like wood smoke, unseen yet impossible to contain. But for all the murmurs of tomorrow, your present is shaped by older rhythms. Dawn sparks chores, water hauled from the well, ewes penned, oxen harnessed. Mid-morning the smith's anvil calls steady thunder, and the baker slides loaves from a clay oven, crusts crackling in the bite of cool air. Noon finds you sweating under high sun, swapping gossip about a night sighted on the ridge or the king's latest levy. By dusk, fatigue blankets every back, Yet a single hawk spiraling against a rose-tinted sky can still draw a sigh of wonder from even the sternest reeve. After supper, stories knit the village together. Around the hearth, an elder recounts Arthur's sword, forged in mist and destiny. A traveling mendicant adds tales of distant Granada where tiled palaces glitter like dragon scales. Children gape, adults smile, and the unspoken lesson threads each tale. Virtue is rewarded, honor binds communities, faith trumps despair. These narratives comfort as surely as will blankets, reinforcing the scaffold of duties that holds the medieval world upright. Yet, in the quiet that follows, you weigh questions the priest's homilies never quite answer. If God ordains all stations, why does the pestilence strike chapel and pigsty alike? If toil is holy, why do gold-ringed fingers seldom blister? You wonder whether salvation might arrive not only through obedience but through kindness offered freely, or courage shown when no heralds watch. Outside, stars reveal themselves, diamonds thrown across black velvet, eternal, indifferent, stunning. Somewhere far off, armies clash for a crown neither you nor your children will ever touch. Somewhere nearer, a newborn's wail announces hope undimmed by plague or tax. The wheel turns, and you are both spoke and observer. Curl onto your straw mattress, listening to the lullaby of night insects beyond the shutter. Tomorrow will resurrect the same litany of tasks, yet you slip toward sleep gripping one small truth. Even the lowliest link in the great chain can sense the tremor of change, can dream of horizons wider than plow lines. Let that possibility cradle you like the softest down, and drift into slumber secure beneath a roof of shared stories, endless stars, and the quiet promise that history's tide is forever turning. Sometimes at the urging of hands much like your own. You rest beneath a dusk-washed sky, ears tuned to the slow toll of the village bell. Its measured notes slip through the air like calm breath, reminding you that, even when harvests fail or fever slips door to door, the patterns of faith remain steady. Incense, candlelight, whispered Latin. These are anchors in a world that can shift from bounty to scarcity in a single season. The priests speak of celestial reward for humble obedience, a paradise far removed from blistered hands and aching backs. Yet the familiar rituals still cradle you with a promise that chaos will not have the final word. Seasons pass, and you marry a kind-eyed partner who knows the soil's moods as well as you do. Together you teach your children when to sow barley, how to mend a fence post, why the moon's shape matters for planting beans. Hard winters and spiteful overlords test your resolve, but you endure, because endurance is the peasant's most precious inheritance. Work, loyalty, fellowship, and stubborn hope. These are the tools your ancestors pressed into your palms, and you wield them every dawn without fanfare. Years slip by like beads on a rosary until one evening you lie beneath a rough linen sheet, candle guttering at the bedside. Your children gather close, their silhouettes golden in the wavering light. Every furrow you cut, every prayer you murmured, every story you passed along has braided itself into their lives. You never wore silk or feasted in a great hall, yet you threaded strength into the tapestry of this community. As your heartbeat slows, you sense the chain that binds plowman to priest, serf to sovereign, the living to the dead, and you know your small, steadfast link will hold. When your eyes finally close, the village continues. Fields still need turning, bells still mark the hours, tales still rise with hearth smoke after sunset. The wheel does not pause for any single soul, but it would wobble without the countless hands that keep it true. You have been one such steady hand. Centuries roll forward, castles crumble into ivy-wrapped ruins, new philosophies challenge old certainties. Trade guilds and ink-stained scholars reshape the map. Even so, the echoes of your time persist, chiming in stone cathedrals, rustling through laws first penned on calfskin, lingering in lullabies that once quieted your grandchildren. The land itself remembers. Furrows trace the same gentle curves they did when you first pressed seed into damp earth, and rivers still carry moonlight past the same low meadows. Modern eyes looking back may see contradictions, a culture capable of sublime art and stark brutality, but they also see people recognizably human, driven by hunger and love, fear and wonder. In that recognition lies the quiet miracle. Across gulf and century, their breath and ours mingle. Now, as you slip toward sleep, let your imagination wander the lanes of that vanished world. Hear the smith's hammer, taste fresh-baked rye, feel straw crackle beneath your palate. Remember that history is not sculpted solely by kings on battlefields. It is also whispered by countless ordinary lives, lives like yours, that lend weight and texture to every epic. Carry that truth into your dreams. Your journey, however humble, threads into the vast story of humankind. Live it with intention, meet dawn with purpose, and trust that even the smallest act of courage or kindness can ripple farther than you will ever know. Good night, and may the starlit hush of medieval fields guide you to gentle rest. You tuck your blanket beneath your chin and allow the candle on your nightstand to dwindle into a single teardrop of light. In that gentle glow, let a different world unfurl. One where a barefoot farm boy named William wakes long before dawn, not to history books but to the hiss of dew on forge coals. No silk swaddles this child of Normandy. His first cradle is the rough earth between rye stalks, his earliest lullaby the rasp of a wooden plow. Yet even then, there is more steel in his eyes than in the sickle he carries. Picture the moment fortune tilts. A local lord rides past the fields, notices the boy calming a skittish colt with nothing but a steady voice and a patient hand. Bring him to the manor, the lord commands. Overnight, William's world expands from furrows to flagstones. As a squire, he polishes armor until his knuckles bleed, memorizes prayers in Latin he barely understands, and sneaks into the practice yard after curfew to perfect a flourish no one has taught him. Each small triumph plants a secret conviction. Station is not destiny. Nerve can rewrite the map. Years roll by like banners in the wind, and whispers of William's talent reach ducal ears. The mighty Duke of Normandy summons the now tall young man to court, tests his mettle in a mock charge, and, delighted at the lad's unblinking courage, taps a sword to his shoulder. "Rise, Sir William," he says. In that instant, a door swings open between two universes, the realm of mud-spattered peasants and the marble corridors of power. William steps through without a backward glance. When the old duke dies childless, Normandy fractures into jostling factions. Barons trade allegiance like merchants haggling over spice, but William moves with the precision of a chess master. He buys loyalty with promises, neutralizes rivals with marriages, and, when talk fails, lets iron speak. By his 20th year, he is duke in name and in fact, ruling a patchwork duchy with both mailed fist and calculating mind. Yet the Channel's gray waters tease him with a grander prize. Across that restless strip of sea lies England, newly leaderless after King Edward the Confessor's death. William's claim is tenuous, anchored to kinship tangled enough to make a monk squint, but ambition is a tide that ignores flimsy dikes. He gathers a fleet of clinker-built ships, their prows carved into wolf heads, and promises land, loot, and absolution to every man who follows. The wind shifts south, the sails billow, history inhales. Imagine the chill on that October morning in 1066 when Norman boots crunched the pebbles of Pevensey Bay. English King Harold, fresh from repelling a Viking horde in the north, charges south to meet them. Shields lock, arrows arc, horses scream. At Hastings, the battle sways like a pendulum until William feigns retreat, luring Harold's shield wall into fatal disarray. A lone arrow finds the English king's eye. Dusk falls on blood-slick grass. The crown's path is suddenly clear. Christmas Day, Westminster Abbey. Incense coils toward stone vaults, mingling with murmurs in a French no peasant understands. William, no longer farm boy, no longer merely duke, is crowned Rex Anglorum. The organ's final chord fades, but the real labor has just begun. He parcels estates to Norman captains, orders a ledger of every plow team and pig pen, the Doomsday Book, and seeds the countryside with fortresses whose stone keeps glare over rebellious valleys. English and French tongues braid into a new vernacular. Old laws bend into new shapes. Even the concept of kingship thickens with continental gravitas. Not all bend willingly. Uprisings flash like summer lightning, first in the fens, then the north. William responds with a soldier's swiftness and, at times, a conqueror's cruelty. Yet within the turbulence he chisels a legacy that will echo through parliaments, common law courts, and every borrowed French word nestled in modern English. Hold that image as sleep stretches toward you. William the Conqueror atop a warhorse, banner snapping, eyes reflecting both torchlight and unspoken futures. Let his story seep into your subconscious as proof that origins are prologue, not prison, that resolve can punch handholds into even the steepest social cliff. And before your mind drifts completely, sense the broader horizon beyond William's reign. Italian city-states are flirting with ideas bold as sunrise. Artisans in Flanders refine wool into velvet soft as a whispered secret. Scholars dust off Aristotle and question doctrines once etched in stone. The Renaissance is stirring just outside the medieval curtain, ready to redraw the stage on which the next dreamer will stand. So breathe in slowly, release the day's cares, and feel the candle's last ember wink out. You are part of the same vast tapestry. One more thread, vibrant and necessary, woven between yesterday's conquests and tomorrow's inventions. Sleep well, traveler across time, and wake ready to claim a chapter uniquely your own. You rise before first light, when the sky is only a pale smear over the crooked roofs, and the chill nips hard enough to sharpen every breath. Pushing open the wooden shutters, you catch the faint glow of forge fires and bakery ovens already alive beyond the alley. It is the town's slow-beating heart awakening. Somewhere down the lane, a rooster crows twice, as though reminding the sun of its cue. You pull on a wool tunic rough against your skin, the same earth-toned cloth your father wore at your age, and step into a street that hums with possibility. Cobblestones are slick with night mist, reflecting flickers of torchlight and the brighter gleam of shop lanterns being trimmed. The sweet aroma of honeyed loaves drifts from the baker's door and mingles effortlessly with the harsher tang of tallow and sewage. A reminder that comfort and hardship share every breath here. Hawkers already set their stalls. One heaps ruby-colored apples into a pyramid. Another fans bolts of Flemish wool dyed a blue so deep it seems stolen from midnight itself. You take the familiar turn toward your workshop, boots thumping in time with the church bell tolling prime. Each resonant note slides through the timber beams overhead and vibrates in your ribs. A quiet promise that the day and its labors matter. Inside, the world narrows to the scent of seasoned oak and the smoky whisper of the forge next door. Whether your craft is coaxing curves from stubborn planks or persuading iron to bend beneath your hammer, you know the rhythm by heart. Measure, mark, breathe, strike, again and again until raw material yields to intention. Tools hang where your grandsire once placed them, their handles glossy from generations of calloused grip. With every cut or clang you feel a lineage pulsing through the grain, a silent chorus urging precision. A merchant has commissioned 6 sturdy chests to carry spices eastward, and the Lord's steward waits for new hinges to secure the manor's shutters before winter gales arrive. Deadlines loom, but there is a secret thrill in shaping matter into something that will outlive you. Outside your doorway, life waltzes past. A procession of monks drifts by, chanting Latin that most townsfolk don't grasp yet still trust to keep darkness at bay. A traveling jester flips cartwheels near the well, his motley bright as parrot's wings against gray plaster walls. Children chase him, shrieking with delight until their mothers call them to chores. You hear snatches of gossip, too. Venice is building floating warehouses. Scholars in Bologna claim to read old Greek scrolls more clearly than ever. Somewhere to the south, a sculptor carves saints so lifelike they seem ready to step down from the niche and breathe. Those rumors are sparks you pocket for later. Sometimes they flare into action. A customer requests a classical column on a headboard, inspired by tales from Florence. A friend in the Painters Guild begs for a frame proportion to new rules of perspective he's eager to test. Even the local miller mutters about a water screw an Arab engineer described, a device that could lift grain faster than any barrow. Change pads quietly through these narrow streets, soft-footed but relentless. Yet most days remain rooted in simple arithmetic. Finish the order before the full moon fair, teach your eldest how to set a plain true, earn enough coin for salt meat and candle wax. Evening finds you at the tavern bench, rough plank beneath your elbows and a warm mug between your palms. Talk drifts from harvest yields to distant wars, From the abbot's new stained glass to whether stars influence humors or merely guide sailors. Laughter sparks, ale foams, and for a while the burdens of debt, plague, and rumor lighten. The walk home under lantern-speckled dark is a ritual of gratitude. You note the hush settling over doorways, the comforting clatter as shutters latch, the faint lullaby of a mother soothing a wakeful infant. Inside your own cottage, you share a supper of pottage thick with leeks and barley, bread whose crust crackles in gentle protest beneath your knife, a sliver of cheese saved from market earnings. Candlelight paints your children's faces gold. Their questions: will the new hinge last 100 storms? Do stars really sing? Remind you how tomorrow's wonders sprout from today's curiosities. Later, when the hearth embers surrender to ash and the house exhales contentment, you lay back on a straw mattress that sighs beneath familiar weight. Through a narrow window, the constellations will exactly as they did for your ancestors, yet you sense the horizon nudging wider. Presses that promise books for those who cannot travel, lenses rumored to magnify the heavens, coins jangling in foreign rhythms along new trade roads. The Renaissance is stirring beyond the walls, but tonight its distant thunder is simply another lullaby joining the crackle of the dying log. You let lids grow heavy, heart steady with the knowledge that skill, love, and perseverance have woven you into something vast. An unbroken chain that stretches from forgotten stonecutters to future inventors. Tomorrow you will rise with dawn again, measure and strike and shape the stubborn world a little closer to your intent. For now, drift in the space where hammers fall silent and dreams take up the rhythm, crafting futures from the raw material of sleep. Rest, craftsman. The stars keep watch, and history waits for your next deliberate stroke. You step beneath a vault of stone so tall it seems to borrow its strength from the very sky. Sunlight sifts through jewel-bright glass, splashing rubies and sapphires across worn flagstones, and for a heartbeat you forget the clangor of merchants and mule carts outside. The cathedral is more than a church. It is the town's compass. Here beggars queue for alms and nobles whisper alliances beneath statues of marble saints. Here scribes copy Aristotle by candlelight and widows barter wool for prayer. Even the poorest peasant feels larger the moment those bronze doors swing shut behind him, as though heaven has stooped to meet earth halfway. Yet the church's authority reaches well beyond nave and transept. Bishops advise kings, abbots weigh war taxes, and parchment seals can brand a sole heretic as swiftly as any sword. On holy days, the pulpit thunders against greed and witchcraft. At night, inquisitors ride in hooded silence, hunting whispers that stray from doctrine. Faith comforts, but it also casts long shadows. Follow a corridor scented with beeswax and incense until you reach a side chapel hardly wider than a shepherd's hut. A lone friar kneels on cold stone, robes patched and dusty from the road. His name is Francesco. Later ages will call him Francis of Assisi. Not long ago he reveled in silk and song, heir to a prosperous cloth merchant. Then a chance encounter with a leper, rotted flesh, pleading eyes, struck his heart like a bell. He stripped off his fine garments, draped himself in rough wool, and vowed to own nothing that moth or rust could claim. Now he murmurs praises for sunbeams and sparrows, convinced that every creature carries a note of the divine. Outside the chapel, stories of his deeds travel faster than any courier. How he hushed a wolf in Gubbio with nothing but kindness, how he sang to swifts wheeling above golden fields, how he walked barefoot to Rome pleading for a church built of human compassion rather than marble. Some call him saint, others madman. Either way, his example spreads. Young men sell their armor, young women trade dowries for coarse habits, and a fresh wind of humility stirs the heavy tapestries of ecclesiastical power. Meanwhile, parchment and pigment work their own quiet revolutions. Monks in distant scriptoria labor from Matins to Compline, copying Arabic treatises on algebra and medicine, glossing them with Latin notes. Illuminators rim capital letters with curling vines and fantastical beasts. Tiny gardens where imagination can bloom even in an age of plague and piety. These books will one day ignite classrooms in Paris and Bologna, but for now they sleep behind iron locks, precious as relics. Step back into the nave and listen. Traders haggle over pepper from the Levant. Pilgrims swap rumors of a new compass sailors use to chase horizons. A mason boasts that Florentines have found a way to raise domes without crumbling walls. Change arrives like dawn. At first a faint blush, then a flood of light, and the medieval mind begins to blink awake to possibilities undreamt a generation earlier. Yet amid these tremors of progress, ordinary lives unfold in their steady cadence. Bakers still coax loaves from brick ovens at dawn. Coopers still hoist barrels onto creaking wagons. Mothers still hush feverish children with lullabies older than the Crusades. The church bell marks terce, sext, none, slicing daylight into sacred segments, and villagers bow their heads, grateful for a rhythm that outlives kings and plagues alike. Night falls, candles gutter, leaving only the silver wash of moonlight on stone. You linger at the cathedral's threshold, aware that tomorrow's sun will rise over a Europe inching toward the Renaissance. Merchants banking in double-entry ledgers, poets testing rhyme in Tuscan dialects, physicians daring to dissect the human form. But tonight the world is still balanced between fear and faith, tradition and transformation, and you are part of its delicate pivot. Carry that thought to bed. The same pulse that pushes masons to quarry granite for soaring spires also quickens a friar's heart to embrace poverty, and stirs scholars to press inked letters onto vellum. It is the enduring, restless spirit of creation, humming in every age. Let it remind you that your own choices, each act of generosity, each question you dare to voice, thread into history's loom beside arches of stone and lines of illuminated verse. Close your eyes. Hear the distant monks chanting the night office, voices braided in harmonies meant to steady a trembling world. Feel the hush settle over cloisters and cottages alike, a promise of rest after labor. In that stillness lies permission to dream, to imagine, to build tomorrow with hands guided by the wisdom of yesterday. Sleep well, knowing the same star that glinted on Francis's ragged cowl now shines through your window, inviting you to rise at dawn ready to carve your own small miracle into the unfolding dawn of human story. You stand beneath the vaulted hush of a candlelit nave, colors from tall lancet windows spilling over your boots like liquid jewels. A choir of monks is folding the last notes of matins into silence when the door at your back thunders open. A mud-streaked rider staggers in, breath clouding the chill air. The king is gone. Long live the king. With those 6 words, the great wheel of feudal life creaks forward, and every bishop, baron, and hedge knight within a day's ride will soon be bartering oaths or sharpening blades. Power, like bread, is freshest when taken hot from the oven. Yet a different kind of authority kneels only steps away. In a side chapel, a rag-robed friar, Francesco, the one they will someday hail as Saint Francis, presses brow to stone. Once he swaggered in silk. Now he praises sun, moon, and field mouse with equal wonder. You watch him whisper gratitude for frost on a rose petal, and something inside you loosens. His gospel is disarmingly simple. Give more, clutch less, see the divine in every feather and paw. In an age when bishops ride to war, that softness feels revolutionary. Outside, the cathedral square crackles with rumor. Merchants debate whether the new monarch will raise tolls on wool or mint a lighter coin. Apprentices trade bawdy jokes beside carts piled high with late harvest apples. A peddler trumpets news from distant Granada where engineers have coaxed water uphill through twisting pipes. Even here, at the ragged hem of the century, fresh notions slip between cobblestones like seeds seeking soil. You follow the road ribboning beyond the gatehouse, past hedgerows gold with October light. It winds toward keeps of cold gray stone and hamlets that smell of peat smoke and tallow. Somewhere a noble household is already stitching mourning bands. Somewhere else an ambitious earl is scribbling letters to allies he swore last week he would never need. Succession unsettles everything. Borders, rents, even the pulse of the commoner who wonders whether next spring's tithe will leave seed enough to sow. Yet dusk finds you back at your own cottage door. Inside, the hearth whispers comfort. Onions simmer with barley. A child's wooden top clatters across the rush-strewn floor. You split a heel of bread, marveling that the same flour paying a lord's tax can still taste of nut and sun in your mouth. Beyond the shutter, crickets take up their ancient fugue, and the village settles into its night-long covenant of mutual trust. Dogs to bark, men-at-arms to patrol, saints to keep watch in painted glass. Later, straw rustles as you lie down, muscles humming with honest fatigue. Sleep pulls you toward dream paths where memories and legends share the same dim tavern light. You glimpse William the Conqueror astride a warhorse, banner snapping against a Sussex wind. You hear Joan of Arc's armor chime like distant bells. You feel Francis's bare feet on dew-cold grass as he preaches that all creatures are siblings beneath one vast roof of stars. Their epochs flicker and fade, yet their choices burn steady as lighthouse flames, showing how a single will can ripple through centuries. As the sky is stitched with stars, let your mind drift to sleep. Click the bell so each new episode appears at the very edge of your dreams. Before consciousness slips away, you sense history breathing all around you. An enormous loom drawing in every life, every triumph, every grief. Your own thread may seem coarse beside silken crowns or gilded reliquaries, but without it some corner of the pattern would gape. Tomorrow you will plow or barter, or mend harness leather. Tomorrow lords will bargain for thrones and friars will chant for mercy. The work differs, yet the purpose is shared. To keep the great tapestry from unraveling, strand by incandescent strand. So inhale the faint perfume of beeswax and ash. Exhale the day's small anxieties, and let the lullaby of turning seasons guide you. Somewhere snow will soon quilt the fields. Somewhere ink will dry on a charter reshaping kingdoms. Somewhere a wandering Franciscan will coax laughter from plague-weary children. And here, beneath a thatch kissed by moonlight, you will dream of castles and cloisters, of power and kindness, and wake ready to write your quiet line into the endless chronicle of humankind. Rest now. The candle gutters, the stars keep watch, and the story continues. You shoulder a hoe just as the eastern sky blushes rose gold, dew soaking the leather of your shoes. Along the lane, a tangle-haired youngster tears through the rye, wooden sword whirling as though he commands an invisible cavalry. No one in the village imagines that this spirited child, William, base-born yet iron-willed, will one day topple a kingdom. For now he is simply another mouth to feed, another dreamer chasing swallows across fallow ground. Seasons spin forward. William is drawn into a lord's hall as page, then squire. There he trades wooden blades for steel and learns to read men by the set of a jaw or the tremor of a rein. His courage catches the eye of Normandy's duke, who knights him and later, dying without a clear heir, leaves William to wrestle fate itself. The young warrior outmaneuvers rival claimants, steadies the duchy, and turns his gaze across the silver ribbon of the Channel, convinced the English crown should rest upon his helm. You watch the story spread like wildfire, whispered in alehouses, chanted by minstrels on market day. Late in the harvest of 1066, black sails appear on the horizon. William's army, mail-clad knights, crossbowmen, archers, spills onto Sussex shingle. On Senlac Ridge, the Anglo-Saxon shield wall stands broad as a rampart of oak. Hours drag, axes bite, horses scream. Then Norman horsemen feign flight, luring defenders into fatal pursuit. At dusk, Harold lies lifeless beneath a tangle of standards. By Christmas, candlelight flickers over William's brow in Westminster Abbey, and a new chapter begins. Almost overnight, French becomes the language of courtly whispers. Manor rolls now list names like Robert Fitzallen, beside Elfjafu the miller's daughter. Mott and Bailey fortresses sprout on strategic hills, earthen mounds crowned by wooden keeps, ditch and palisade hugging their flanks. Stone soon replaces timber. Lofty curtain walls, arrow slits, crenellated towers that claw at the clouds. Within, lords bargain over alliances while jesters tumble for scraps of laughter. Outside, smiths shape iron into spears that may defend or oppress. Yet castles are only half the skyline. Cathedrals rise, too. Skeletons of limestone and awe. Master masons set pointed arches against gravity, and stained glass windows catch sunbeams, scattering rubies and sapphires across flagstones. Monasteries copy Aristotle beside Augustine, their scriptoria humming with quills and quiet ambition. Abbey granaries swell with tithed grain. Abbots ride to Parliament, wielding pastoral staves in one hand, royal writs in the other. Faith consoles, but it also commands. When Pope Urban II, aflame with zeal, calls warriors to reclaim Jerusalem, thousands stitch crimson crosses to their cloaks. You hear their vows in the square. Absolution, adventure, perhaps a fief in distant sunlight. But the road east is paved with thirst and fever. Siege towers burn, and the taking of the Holy City in 1099 soaks marble streets scarlet. Successive crusades will grind on, exchanging citadels, relics, and grievances that outlive the armies themselves. Still, caravans returning through Genoa and Bruges carry pepper, silk, algebra, and stories of astrolabes that read the night like scripture. Ideas, unlike borders, are porous. Back home, the plowshare remains your metronome. Wheat bows beneath august heat. Oxen heave. The reeve tallies sheaves for the Lord's granary. Yet laborers now dare to haggle for coin rather than serfdom. Scarcity of hands after each bout of pestilence tilts the scales. Rumor says some folk even leave the manor without permission. Drawn to chartered towns where guild halls ring with new freedoms and the smell of hot wax seals contracts between men who once bowed without question. But evening finds you again at your hearth. Barley stew simmers. Children trace castles in the ash. Beyond the shutter, a choir of crickets sets tempo for the dark. You think of William's battered standard preserved in a minster chest, of Benedictine monks bent over vellum, of crusaders staring at alien constellations, and realize the same pulse beats in all of them, and in you, a yearning to carve certainty from chaos, to leave a mark that endures after the final candle gutters. So close your eyes. Let the rhythmic rasp of wind through thatch mingle with distant church bells tolling Compline. Dream of ramparts gleaming under moonlight, of manuscripts where gold leaf catches flame, of fields lying fallow under first frost. History turns like a great water wheel, creaking but unstoppable, and every life, king, knight, nun, plowman, adds weight to its spokes. When dawn creeps over the lintel, you will rise again to meet your small share of its turning. Steady in the knowledge that even humble furrows help feed destinies fit for coronation. Rest well, traveler in time. The embers glow low, the stars keep quiet watch, and the saga of your own making waits patiently for the next stroke of sunrise. You stir beneath a painted ceiling of stars, and the candle at your bedside sputters once, inviting you to slip through time into the chainmail dreams of a boy called Louis. You feel his racing pulse on the eve of the First Crusade, an echo that hums against your own ribs. He is the youngest son of an obscure French baron, drawn more to psalms than to sparring, yet tonight he fingers the cloth cross his father has sewn to his cloak. Urban II's thunderous sermon still rings in his ears. Deus vult, God wills it. By dawn you ride at Louis's shoulder as the pilgrim army snakes through snow-glittering alpine passes, then down to the sickly heat of the Levant. Months blur into blisters and hymns. Comrades fall to fever and Saracen arrows, yet Louis presses on, convinced Jerusalem itself is the hinge between earth and heaven. When the city finally cracks in July 1099, you feel his sword pause midair. Around him, streets run red, prayers warp into screams. Louis sheathes his blade, chooses instead to kneel on blood-slick flagstones inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, whispering for mercy neither side is offering. Stay with him. He will not sail home. Instead, he accepts a fief under King Baldwin II, patrols the Judean hills, and writes awkward French letters urging his teenage wife to join him. She does, only to die of winter ague outside Acre, a tragedy that cracks his faith and leaves him raising their son on sand and uncertainty. Years pass. Louis learns Arabic greetings from merchants, geometry from Byzantine engineers, medicinal lore from Syriac monks. Each lesson chips away at the iron certainties he carried from France. It is 1120 when you stand beside him on the quay at Tyre, sea wind tugging his graying hair. He sends his grown son to serve the Crusader princes and boards a creaking cog for Europe, pockets heavy not with relics, but with vellum scrolls of Greek philosophy translated in Antioch. Home is unrecognizable. Plague-thinned villages, a father and brothers dead, rival lords carving his inheritance like roast boar. Yet you sense no panic, Louis has survived desert sieges. Border skirmishes feel almost domestic. Watch as he rebuilds. He invites masons who learned pointed arches in Outremer, Jewish physicians versed in Galen, and Moorish weavers who dye silk the color of midnight violets. A library rises beside his keep. Peasants whisper that parchment, not spears, guards their future. Taxes are eased for widows. Grain reserves replace war chests. On feast days, Louis walks the fields in plain wool, asking tenants what harvest they fear most and quietly forgiving arrears when drought scorches the rye. Decades roll. The boy who brandished a pilgrim's sword now grips a walking staff. In 1145, he transfers his estates to his son and withdraws to a Cistercian monastery tucked among limestone cliffs. You hear the silence there, only the rumble of the mill stream and the crackle of oak in the hearth. Louis copies Psalms in a neat Gothic hand, then pauses to annotate Aristotle in the margin, marrying faith to reason one quiet stanza at a time. Brother scribes note how gently he treats the novices, how quickly he carries bread to lepers at the gate. On a frost-silvered morning in 1148, Louis exhales for the last time. No banners, no trumpet, just the low chant of monks and the smell of beeswax. Yet his ripple widens. Scholars will cite the translations he funded. His tenants will remember a lord who taxed by conscience, not by sword, and Crusader chronicles will record a knight who refused to kill once the city walls fell. Now drift back to your own bed. Feel the hushed lesson Louis leaves behind settling over you like a woolen cloak. That courage can swing a sword, yes, but it can also till a field fairly, finance a library, or cradle the sick. Let that notion warm your thoughts as sleep folds over you. History has room for warriors and healers, for conquerors and caretakers, and sometimes, as Louis shows, all of them live in one fragile human heart. Close your eyes. Breathe in candle smoke and distant church bells. Somewhere, a crusader lays down his blade and opens a book. Somewhere, a peasant lifts a plow beneath the same indifferent stars. And here, in the quiet between wake and dream, you decide which legacy to follow when morning's trumpets sound. You taste dust and cold iron on the wind before you even open your eyes. A moment ago you were lying safe beneath timber rafters. Now stepgrass brushes your boots and the sky is a hard blue bowl with nothing between it and eternity save a single falcon. Across this boundless horizon, a youth named Temujin gallops toward you, his pony sure-footed, his ambitions limitless. He is scarcely 16, but loss has already carved its map upon his face. A murdered father, an abandoned clan, winters survived on scraps and willpower alone. You feel the throb of hunger in his gut, and the fiercer hunger in his heart, to bind every wandering banner under one name strong enough to frighten fate itself. By night fire he forges oaths the way others hammer arrowheads. Within a generation those oaths turn to an empire faster than parchment can record. In 1206, the chiefs lift Temujin on a felt carpet and proclaim him Chinggis Khan, universal ruler. You ride beside him now, wind burns stinging your cheeks, as 10,000 hooves shake Asia's spine. Cities that forget to surrender are erased. Those that yield become vital beads on a silk thread of trade stretching from the Yellow Sea to the Black. Caravan bells mingle with prayer calls, because the Khan welcomes every faith so long as it bows to his authority. Mongol postal riders relay news across continents in the time it takes lesser kingdoms to saddle a horse. Papermakers, astronomers, and gunpowder secrets slip westward in their wake. Europe hears only the thunder. Monks whisper that Gog and Magog have awoken. Barons polish swords that will never be long enough. Yet envoys still brave the distance, dazzled by felt-walled palaces and market stalls overflowing with jade, saffron, and lapis lazuli. You walk the tented corridors of this new world and sense how fear and fascination can share a single heartbeat. After Chinggis dies in 1227, the empire is parceled among sons and grandsons who love conquest more than concord. One heir, Hulagu, drives his tumbling avalanche of cavalry into the soul of the Islamic Golden Age. Baghdad falls in 1258, its libraries ash drowned beneath the Tigris. Everywhere the caliph's banners are lowered, the Mamluk spears of Egypt rise in answer, and the chessboard of power is reset once more. But even steppe storm clouds scatter. By the late 14th century, the Mongol superstructure splinters into rival khanates and, gradually, into memory. They leave behind lighter saddles, safer roads, and the unsettling proof that empires can materialize and vanish at a speed previously reserved for legends. You drift west with the trade winds, thinking the worst is over, yet a darker rider is already on the move. In the harbors of the Black Sea, silk bales and spice crates share deck space with stowaways, fleas drunk on infected rat blood. When Genoese galleys dock at Messina in 1347, the crew stagger ashore fevered and blotched. The sickness leaps street to street, ship to ship, easier than gossip. Physicians blame bad air. Astrologers indict hostile stars. Preachers thunder about divine wrath. But the Black Death heeds none of them. Swollen buboes bloom like nightmarish roses. Whole parishes die faster than graves can be dug. You smell wood smoke from hastily built pyres. Hear the rattling wheels of dead carts. Feel the social fabric fray under the strain of so many empty chairs at supper. Yet plague, like empire, reshapes more than it destroys. Fields lie fallow for want of hands, so surviving peasants discover a strange new leverage. Work for better terms or walk away. Guild masters raise wages to keep apprentices from fleeing. Landlords forgive rents. And the feudal bonds that once felt eternal begin to rust. Amid grief, seeds of rebirth germinate. Curl deeper into sleep now, carrying three intertwined truths. A herdsman's son can redraw the world's borders. A microbe unseen can topple every certainty. And between those extremes, ordinary people, merchants, midwives, you reimagine what life can be. Let hoofbeats fade into ocean waves. Let the whisper of silks become the hush of your own breathing. History's wheel keeps turning, but tonight it slows just enough for you to rest in the still point at its center, where past turmoil becomes present wisdom and tomorrow's hope. Breathe, drift, dream. You wake to the mournful toll of a single church bell, its echo rolling through narrow Florentine streets that smell of lavender and decay. Word has already swept the city. A foreign ship docked 3 days ago, and sailors with purple swellings behind the ears now lie stiff on straw pallets. The plague has arrived. At first you convince yourself the disaster will spare your family. Then fever steals your sister's breath. Your mother's hands tremble with chills, and the candle you set at their bedside gutters out one by one. By summer's height, the dead outnumber the living. Carts rattle past at dawn piled with bodies sprinkled in quicklime, heading for mass trenches outside the walls. Priests mutter last rites faster than they can cross themselves. Physicians bleed patients or wave smoking herbs. Yet the pestis ignores them all. Black nodes blossom in armpit and groin, vomiting follows, and most are gone in 3 days. When the worst wave passes, 1 in every 2 Florentines has vanished. Grief presses on your chest like the August heat, but idleness feels worse. You are Giovanni, a merchant's son whose lessons in Latin rhetoric now seem hollow beside the silence in your once busy household. To escape that void, you open your father's strongbox of wool trade notes and begin rewriting them, organizing debts, recording prices, expanding margins with tidy calligraphy. Numbers soothe. Ink is a kind of resurrection. Soon neighboring widows pay you to set their tangled ledgers straight, and the city's new officials ask you to tally lost properties for tax revisions. Quill by quill, a vocation is born from ashes. With labor scarce, tailors, masons, even humble field hands demand coin instead of gratitude. You watch former beggars stride under marble arches wearing imported fustian, bold enough to haggle with magistrates. Old certainties crack like kiln-fired tiles. If death can snatch a bishop and spare a stable boy, perhaps birth is not destiny after all. Night descends, and for the first time in months the streets pulse with cautious life. You slip into an inn where lamplight paints amber circles across rough oak tables. A Breton sailor offers pepper from Calicut at price no Florentine would have dreamt of before the plague. A journeyman mason brags that he now earns twice his master's wage. A gray-robed friar preaches that humanity must repent, while a masked lute player croons something far less pious. In this smoky room, hierarchy feels as flimsy as the parchment you keep in your satchel. Outside the city walls, another world stirs beneath the same stars. In a thatched cottage, a peasant family thanks God for healthy lungs and a sack of rye. Their children fall asleep beside embers while grandmother recites tales of Charlemagne. Stories older than the house itself, yet renewed each telling. Downriver, Benedictine monks chant Compline. Once the final amen melts into stone, scribes lean into candlelight to illuminate psalms with lapis and gold, determined that wisdom, unlike flesh, should not rot. Hours later, you retreat to your own chamber above the counting house. You set aside the ledger you've been balancing. A miller's estate, left airless. Blow out the lamp and let questions drift across the dark. What if plague returns? What if all this suffering serves some hidden purpose? What can one survivor give back to the silent half of the world? From those questions, a plan forms like dawn over the Arno. You will gather friends, 10, maybe more, educated, quick-witted souls still breathing, still yearning for beauty amid ruin. Together you will leave the fetid city for a country villa, and there spin tales to outshine dread. Ribald stories for laughter, moral tales for instruction, love stories to remind broken hearts they can mend. Each narrative a small torch held against the dark. Sleep creeps in like a gentle tide. You hear distant hoofbeats on empty roads. Merchants bringing cinnamon from Alexandria. Scholars carrying Greek manuscripts rescued from Byzantium. Peasants walking toward manors where landlords can no longer afford to sneer. Europe is rearranging itself in the moonlight, and you, Giovanni, will lend it new words. Breathe. Feel the mattress beneath you, rough hemp, yet safer than any gilded throne in a plague year. Above, the ceiling beams cradle shadows. Outside, the Arno whispers its ageless lullaby. Let the river's murmur carry you past sorrow, past fear, into dreams where cities recover and libraries fill, where a young scribe's ink seeds a renaissance he cannot yet imagine. Tomorrow will bring bargaining in markets and laughter in taverns, processions of penitents and daring physicians boiling instruments in wine. Tomorrow will ask who dares to rebuild. But tonight, while candles burn low and church bells lie silent, you may rest secure in one simple, stubborn truth. Humanity survives by telling stories, and by believing the next chapter can be brighter than the last. Close your eyes. Let plague carts fade. Let quills fall silent. You have work to do when the sun returns. For now, sleep, dream, heal. You stir just as the sky in the east blushes from violet to pale rose, the hush of night stretching one last languid moment before day asserts itself. A lone rooster splits the silence, its cry rippling across dew-coated meadows, over stone cottages and up to banners that hang limp atop gray battlements. Within heartbeats, 1,000 unseen gears begin to turn. You imagine the baker first. Embers coaxed to fresh flame, arms dusted white as he shapes loaves for townsfolk who will queue before the sun fully clears the horizon. Beyond the gate, a shepherd guides his woolly kingdom toward hillside pastures, the soft bleats merging with distant church bells that summon the pious to matins. In a cramped loft above the mill, a miller's daughter hefts wooden buckets, her breath misting as water sloshes inside. Across the courtyard of a manor, squires tighten girths and oil leather while their lords finish prayers, already thinking of border skirmishes and uneasy truces. The rhythm feels eternal, yet fragile. You sense how famine can follow one sour season, how a single spark of plague can silence every cottage you now picture alive with purpose. Nobles retire behind oak doors lined with woolen hangings, convinced their height and heraldry grant immunity. But in truth, a poisoned dagger or unseen miasma respects no rank. Thus guards pace ramparts in measured steps, spear tips glinting with first light. Below, a sleepy stable boy curls against warm flanks of a destrier, ready to run, saddle, sound an alarm. While bustle grows, monks far away extinguish their last night candles. Ink dries on pages of Augustine and Galen, works they copy so knowledge will outlive crumbling walls. Their quiet vows braid with the clang of anvil and the gossip of the market into one vast hymn of human striving, each note distinct, but all carried on the same morning breeze. You notice, too, how stories bind these lives. At the hearth of a timber-framed home, children rub their eyes while mother recounts a tale of a knight who slayed despair itself with courage and courtesy. In smoky taverns after sunset, Minstrels trade that very legend for a cup of ale, reshaping details to coax laughter or tears. Myth and memory weave safety nets beneath souls walking tightropes of uncertainty. Yet change is already whispering. Merchants return from Iberian ports speaking of astrolabes and strange fruits. Scholars debate Aristotle newly arrived from Arabic translators. A journeyman mason eyes cathedral arches and dreams of vaults that soar even higher. And somewhere, paper, thinner than lambskin yet strong enough to carry ideas beyond any bishop's reach, drifts from hand to hand. You feel the medieval clockwork turning, but also loosening. The Black Death will soon redraw every contract. The printing press waits in the wings. Caravels will ride trade winds toward worlds still ink blank. For villagers now yawning and tightening belts, these revolutions slumber like seeds in frozen earth. Unseen, unstoppable. Pause and breathe. Hear the soft drum of your pulse matching the hoofbeats of a courier racing to deliver news of a king's birth or demise. Smell rye dough rising, wet leather, pine smoke curling from smithy chimneys. Taste the crisp tang of morning air that, for an instant, belongs equally to serf and sovereign. Remember, you, too, stand inside history's great loom. Your choices, whispered or shouted, become threads interlacing with those of bakers, monks, queens, and cartwrights long gone. Future eyes will study our century with the same mix of awe and dismay we reserve for theirs, wondering how we dared, how we failed, how we loved. So as your real-world body settles deeper into the mattress, let this dawn keep unfolding behind your closed lids. Watch the sun climb, gilding river mist and warming chapel spires. See fields turn from silver to green, hear hammer rhythm quicken, feel market streets swell with barter and laughter. Let the medieval day play on, safe within the theater of your mind, until its colors fade quietly into the soft gray of dream. May that dream grant you the baker's faith in daily bread, the monk's patience with slow work, the peasant's resilience after storm and blight, the knight's vow to guard what is good. Carry their virtues into your waking hours. Leave their fears beneath the thatch and stone. The bells ring prime, time for them to labor, time for you to rest. Exhale. Drift. Somewhere, a scribe dips quill in ink and writes the opening line of a new chronicle. Somewhere, you answer by slipping into peaceful sleep, ready to author tomorrow's page when morning finds you. Sleep well, traveler through time. The world, old and new, awaits your story. You ease onto the crackling straw pallet, muscles humming from a day behind the plow, yet your mind refuses to settle. Out beyond your cottage door, torches flicker like grounded stars, guiding neighbors to pens, lofts, and prayer before sleep. Inside, the hearth exhales its final amber sigh. Stew scent lingers in beams darkened by generations of smoke. Tonight, you let your thoughts drift upward, past the thatch, beyond the village oak, to trace the invisible lattice that holds the realm together. Somewhere upriver, a reeve tallies tithes for your manor's lord. Farther still, that lord sharpens strategy in a candlelit solar, sworn to send men-at-arms if raiders test the boundary hedge. And above him, the king himself kneels before a jeweled reliquary, pleading for harvests he will never sow. Feudal threads bind every soul in this land, coarse twine for serfs, silk cords for earls, but none may cut free without consequence. You recall the steward's last visit. Parchment unfurled, rents recited, an inked seal shimmering like a threat. Yet you also remember the winter a roaming band was turned away by armored riders flying your lord's colors. Protection and obligation, two bars of the same yoke. The balance feels ancient, almost holy, a living cathedral built from oaths instead of stone. Still, cracks appear. Laborers whisper that after recent plagues they bartered lower dues from desperate landlords. In town, guild banners snap proudly, evidence that skilled hands can now weigh more than noble blood. Even the parish priest, voice thick with incense and scripture, admits the world tilts faster than his Latin can track. Your eldest, eyes bright with questions, asks why God places kings in castles and parents in fields. You answer with the story your own father told. A great ladder stretching from earth to heaven, each rung a duty, each duty a blessing. Yet you wonder how long that tale will soothe a child who sees traders in imported silks and jonglers singing of distant wonders. Beyond the hedgerows, new powers awaken. Ironshod hooves drum across Asian steppe, and rumors reach even your ale bench about thunder riders who topple sultans and shatter kingdoms. If such forces can unseat caliphs, might they not ripple west, bending your island of routine? History's tide, once sluggish, now runs swift and strange. But for tonight, the grand currents can wait. Your world narrows to the ember glow and the steady breathing of those you love. You stroke coarse blanket wool, grounding yourself in its scratchy honesty. Each fiber was sheared, spun, and woven by hands like yours, evidence that small labors stitch together the very fabric of a crown's dominion. Close your eyes. Hear the far-off chapel bell toll Compline, a liquid bronze note that drifts over tilled earth, through forest hush, into the star-watched fields where foxes prowl. That single sound threads peasant and prince, sinner and saint, into one vast moment of stillness. Let it draw you downward, like warm soil inviting seed. In dreams, you may climb that invisible ladder, stand in echoing halls where stained glass scatters sunrise, or ride beneath pennants snapping above siege towers. You might witness parchments sealed with crimson wax, or monks bending over illuminated gospels radiant as summer dawn. Whatever visions come, carry them back with you at first light. They will not lighten tomorrow's cart nor sharpen the scythe, but they will kindle something rarer. A sense that your furrow, your hearth, your whispered prayers are threads in a sweeping tapestry, shimmering alongside banners, chronicles, and constellations. Sleep now, farmer of history. Let fatigue melt into the earth you serve. Morning will nudge you awake with crow and bell, and you will shoulder familiar tools. Yet inside, a quiet fire of perspective will burn, humble but unextinguishable. With every seed you drop into damp loam, remember, you set roots not only for wheat, but for the endless story of all who toil, rule, heal, and dream. And in that story, your flicker of light joins a million others, bright enough to challenge any darkness. You slip inside a dream where moonlight splashes silver across a quiet tilt yard. There, resting against the fence rails, waits a stallion whose flanks tremble with contained energy. Tonight you are not the weary villager, but the freshly dubbed knight, an heir to oaths hammered out on an anvil of duty long before you drew breath. Feel the subtle tug of responsibility settle across your shoulders as surely as the riveted mail that now drapes your body. Every link a promise to protect, every plate a reminder of the faith others place in you. From childhood you were groomed for this mantle. At 7 you served as page, eyes bright as you fetched goblets and mimicked the swordmaster's footwork in the courtyard dust. At 14 you rose to squire, polishing armor dawn after dawn, memorizing the rhythm of hoofbeats and the sweet acrid scent of oiled steel. You learned to angle a kite shield so an arrow's kiss glances away rather than bites, to guide a warhorse with knee and thought alone, to hear the difference between an honest challenge and a treacherous boast. Each lesson braided skill with character, teaching that courage without mercy is merely ferocity, and strength without honor corrodes the soul that wields it. Now the trumpet of adulthood has sounded. Feel your heartbeat echo inside the enclosed helm as you step onto the field of a tournament. No blood feud here, only ritualized contest. The crowd hushes while lances lower, and for an instant the world narrows to the gleaming target on your opponent's shield. Impact comes like thunder through bone and sinew, yet the greater test arrives later, when you dismount to clasp the other rider's hand, acknowledging shared respect above fleeting triumph. This is the secret of chivalry. The fiercest strike must be paired with the gentlest courtesy. Beyond the lists, the tapestry of a knight's life widens. When a nearby hamlet petitions for aid against marauders, you lead a handful of retainers beneath your banner, its colors not merely pigment on cloth, but a portable covenant. Villagers cheer as the threat melts into the forest's gloom. In gratitude, they offer loaves warm from the communal oven. You thereby fulfill the feudal bargain. The strong shielding the vulnerable, the humble supporting the strong through grain and service. Such bonds, lord to vassal, master to apprentice, stitch society together, neither chain nor shackle but living thread that frays if neglected. Yet even while you cradle this traditional order, distant tremors foretell change. Merchants in wool caps tally profits that rival a minor noble's rents. Scholars debate Aristotle by candle glow, daring to suggest that reason can stand beside revelation. Murmurs of reform drift down monastery halls where once only obedience reigned. You sense the horizon shifting, though the battlements around you still feel solid. History, like a restless charger, will soon demand a new rider. But not this night. This night belongs to softer things. To the hush settling over bivouac fires, to the chapel bell marking Compline, to a velvet sky where constellations, ancient guides for pilgrim and crusader alike, keep watch. Unbuckle your gauntlets and let calloused fingers brush the grass. Smell the mingled fragrances of beeswax, leather, and distant heather. Somewhere a lute offers a quiet lament, a reminder that behind every gleaming helm beats a heart longing for solace, companionship, peace. Allow the tension to ebb down your spine like rain rolling from a polished cuirass. Tomorrow may call you to joust for honor, arbitrate a land dispute, or ride at dawn beneath banners snapping in martial wind. Tomorrow may test whether the code you cherish bends or breaks under pressure of ambition and change. Yet for these few hours, wrapped in the gentle dark, you can simply breathe, each inhalation a vow renewed, each exhalation a letting go of doubt. Feel the ground steady beneath you. It carries the footprints of countless knights who once wrestled the same fears and hopes. Know that, like them, you are more than steel and ceremony. You are a guardian of promises, a student of humility, an ember of compassion glowing inside mailed ribs. As eyelids grow heavy, imagine lowering your visor one last time. But this time to welcome sleep, not battle. Let the world's clamor fade until only a faint drum of hooves remains, receding into dream. Rest, valiant one. In the quiet forge of the night, your spirit is tempered anew. Ready for dawn's first light, when armor will gleam, pennons will rise, and you will stride forward, borne by courage, guided by conscience, and strengthened by the timeless truth that the greatest victories are those won within. You ease into the hush of night and feel the straw mattress cradle every tired muscle. Outside, the village has fallen still, yet your imagination strolls beyond the crooked cottages and toward distant stone walls where moonlight kisses polished steel. In that silver glow stands the figure of the medieval knight, once the pinnacle of power, now a wandering emblem of honor trying to outpace the drumbeat of change. As a child of privilege, he began life as a page, clattering through echoing halls with cups and candlesticks balanced in trembling hands. Years later, as a squire, he brushed mud from a master's boots and memorized the dance of sword against shield until every heartbeat followed its rhythm. Tonight he grips the lance not for war but for ritual. The tilt yard is hushed. The crowd's breath catches. 2 chargers pound forward. Then a splintering crack, a ringing helm, a courteous bow, proof that real valor is measured less by striking than by the grace that follows impact. That lesson, whispered to your resting mind, is a first gentle hook. Strength matters, yet character is the truer armor. But time respects no code of chivalry. Longbows, pike walls, and gunpowder soon thread fear through every gleaming hauberk. Some knights, stripped of purpose, sell their blades to the highest bidder. Others roam as brigands haunting lonely crossroads. A restless few chase distant legends. Jerusalem's walls, the elusive grail, the mirage of redemption at the world's edge. Their fading era teaches you a second truth. Identity must grow or it wilts. Even those sworn to eternal ideals must kneel before the reality of change. Draw the blanket higher and drift from castle ramparts to a valley where stone cloisters ring with softer echoes. Within those walls lives the monk, wrapped in undyed wool, walking barefoot upon worn flagstones toward the dawn office. He has bartered all earthly ambition for 3 simple coins: poverty, chastity, obedience, and spends them daily in pursuit of a treasure no thief can steal: stillness. Before sunrise, he chants psalms that rise and settle like doves in rafters dark with candle soot. Later, he bends over vellum, scratching secrets of Greeks and Romans into fresh life. Ink glows beneath colored illuminations. Lapis wings, gold halos, turning knowledge into art. His discipline is not an escape but an anchor, reminding your half-sleeping mind that meaning lies in repetition done with love. The breath, the heartbeat, the quiet promise you make to yourself before each new day. Yet monasteries, too, feel the world's tremors. Kings demand counsel, popes demand taxes, and sometimes even monks march behind banners when faith and politics snarl together. Compassionate orders, Franciscans barefoot on snow-dusted roads or Dominicans preaching in bustling squares, carry learning beyond cloister walls, proving that service and scholarship are siblings, not strangers. Here waits your third gentle hook. Knowledge kept is knowledge buried. Only when shared does it pulse with life. In this dreamscape, knight and monk seem opposite poles, blade and book, clamor and quiet. But listen closely and you'll hear them sing the same refrain. Commitment, humility, purpose. Whether clad in riveted steel or coarse undyed wool, each embodies a way to face uncertainty, either by charging into it or by kneeling within it. Let that harmony settle into your breathing. Inhale courage, exhale contemplation. Inhale resolve, exhale surrender. Feel them braid together like threads in a heraldic banner fluttering just beyond the edge of waking. Now the night deepens. Across Europe, armies muster, scholars argue, plagues steal through harbor alleys. But above these swirling currents, a lantern of possibility still glows. Merchants in wool caps count coins that will birth a middle class. University masters debate Aristotle beneath guttering torches, planting seeds that will blossom into the Renaissance. Printers will soon press movable type, and caravels will lean against Atlantic winds. Change is no longer a rumor. It is the tide itself. Yet even tides obey the moon, and the moon tonight is patient, assuring you that transformation need not drown what came before. It can carve new channels through ancient rock, letting fresh water sing alongside old. Wrap this promise around your thoughts like a woolen cloak. Your era, too, will someday feel antique. Your own armor, be it resume lines, digital profiles, or proud convictions, may lose its gleam, and your private cloister, your routines, your guarded hopes, may one day open its gates. That is not a warning but an invitation. When morning breaks, you may choose the knight's courage or the monk's devotion, or, better yet, weave the two. Stand firm, yet stay supple. Hold fast to principle, yet welcome new light through the stained glass of your mind. Feel your pulse slow, steady as a monastery bell. Outside, imaginary banners furl against an imagined breeze. Inside, the hush of a scriptorium settles over your heart. Let eyelids drift closed like great oaken doors at Compline. The past keeps watch. The future waits its turn. You, suspended in this gentle now, need only rest. Dream, then, of hooves on dewy grass and candles guttering in choir stalls, of tourney cheers and quill scratches, of vows kept and vows reborn. Dream knowing that while history moves relentless as a river, the quiet pools it leaves behind are yours for drinking. And when dawn finally melts the stars, rise with both sword and psalter inside you, ready to meet the day in strength and to meet yourself in stillness. You exhale, and the market's clamor dissolves into a gentle hush, like coins settling in a purse. By day you are a merchant, a newcomer to the medieval stage, but tonight, as your pulse slows, you feel the unseen gears of an older world turning beneath your resting body. Picture the candlelit counting house where you tallied peppercorns and florins until your eyes stung. Ledgers smell of beeswax, quills squeak across parchment, and every flourish of ink is a tiny wager on tomorrow's wins. On the Venetian wharf you tasted salt and possibility in equal measure. In Bruges you bartered broadcloth for spices that still perfume your sleeves. Trade has made you solvent, yet also suspect. Noblemen nod stiffly, priests mutter about avarice, but coin speaks a language doors understand. That tension, envy on one side, ambition on the other, is your first lullaby tonight, a reminder that opportunity often tiptoes where privilege refuses to look. Let the scene blur, and drift inland along rutted roads patrolled by more shadows than laws. Bandits lurk beyond the torchlit posts. One bad season turns former ploughmen into desperate swords. You travel anyway, hiring stout guards, trusting in St. Christopher medals and your own quick sums. risk measured against reward. Feel your heartbeat mimic the hoofbeats of pack horses. Each echo carves a new neural groove, teaching your brain that courage is simply fear that has learned the exchange rate. Now the dream lantern swings toward guild halls. Inside, masters debate grain tariffs beside roaring hearths. They argue, vote, and inscribe their seals in wax. Proto-parliaments where commoners rehearse a future no feudal charter anticipated. Guild bylaws stabilize weights and measures. Apprentices memorize them as devoutly as monks intone psalms. Commerce, you realize, is becoming its own kind of scripture, promising salvation through fair weights rather than indulgences. That insight settles over your drifting mind like a soft cloak. Power is shifting from armored fists to inked agreements, from lances to ledgers. Yet conscience taps your shoulder. The church warns that profit can warp the soul. Preachers decry usury, citing councils and saints. You remember slipping a silver groat into an alms box before boarding ship, hoping to balance spreadsheet and spirit. Moral accounting becomes a second set of books you keep invisible but never ignored. In the quiet between breaths, ask yourself, how much is enough? Let the question float unanswered. Uncertainty is a necessary spice in the stew of growth. Beyond city walls, monasteries glow like constellations for travelers at dusk. Franciscans pad barefoot through frost, preaching that true riches are found in emptied palms. Dominicans chase heresy with syllogisms sharp as any blade. Their libraries translate Aristotle out of Arabic, smuggling reason into realms once ruled solely by faith. You fund a scriptorium's new roof, half philanthropy, half brand strategy. But while monks chant gratitude, something pure stirs within you, a thirst for knowledge unpriced by any market. That is your second lullaby. Curiosity, proof that mind and margin can profit together. Listen as night deepens. Distant smiths quench glowing iron. A castle guard coughs above creaking drawbridge chains. In a cobbler's loft, two lovers whisper promises over the day's last candle stub. Medieval life is not a tableau frozen in amber. It breathes, bargains, prays, revolts, innovates. The plague will come again. Longbows will puncture chivalry's myth. Printers will scatter ideas like dandelion seeds. But just now, history holds its breath so you can rest. Inhale slowly. Taste the faint aromas this epoch offers. Cardamom from Alexandria, beeswax from Brittany, wet wool after a coastal rain. Exhale any modern hurry. The sleep you are entering is a caravanserai. Dreams unpack their wares in quiet stalls, and you may browse without spending a denier. Before the final candle gutters, promise yourself three things, as merchants do before a long voyage. Weigh honestly, whether counting coins or choices, let the measure be true. Scales unbalanced in secret still tilt the soul. Venture widely. The safest ledger is a closed one, but profit of coin or character requires opening to the unknown. Settle fairly. Every contract, spoken or silent, threads you into a wider tapestry. Honor it, and the cloth holds. With those vows tucked like promissory notes beneath your pillow, you are free to drift. Let crosswinds of crusader rumor and monastic hymn hum beyond hearing. Let the torque of change turn the world while you lie still. In this bed of straw, beneath a thatch galaxy, you are both witness and participant, margin and text. Sleep now, merchant of the Middle Ages. Tomorrow the market bell will ring, caravans will queue at the city gate, and you will rise to haggle, to calculate, to imagine.